Hello everyone, my name is Christian and welcome to my hobby blog. So today we are doing something a little special, something that I felt like I needed to do just to kind of set, context for my film collecting. But so this video is going to be in how I got into collecting, along with my entire Criterion collection, because I just hit over 50. And I didn't realize it. Just one day I was counting like how much or how many releases I have per company, and it ended up being that I had just over, I have 24 Arrow video releases. I have 53 Criterion releases. I have about 20, I think. I have about 20 or so Vinegar Syndrome releases. And I have about 10, I think, Scream Factory releases. So just to kind of get some numbers there. But one thing I want to talk about is that how I got into collecting. I got into it because of frequent guest on my channel, Will. He was my film professor throughout my undergrad. And so he's one of the directors or so, or like the coordinator in the residence hall that I lived in. And one day, I think we met each other through heavy metal first, because I remember one of my first memories of him was him walking up and being like, "Hey, I know you like metal. What's your favorite Iron Maiden album?" And I was like, I barely knew who he was. It was like a week within like my first like semester. And I was like, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Like, that was just, like, my first choice. And it also helps that I saw Iron Maiden live do the whole album about. There was, like, 2 songs they didn't do that they've never done. But, like, that's a really special album to me. And we talked about it. And I became involved in the student council. And, all that. So I slowly got to know him. And I want to say fall of 2016, I took a film studies course with him. It was called World Cult Cinema, I think, or World Cult Films, something like that. And that course like really opened my eyes to like what film is, because he taught us like camera techniques and like all that, and would like point out like film criticism and kind of showed us how to watch a movie like more analytically. And I really liked that because I'd taken a previous film studies course as a freshman, my first semester, and it was like pretty good, but we mostly watched like mainstream movies, which I liked at the time. But when I started taking the cult films course and we were watching like, I can't even remember like what movies we saw, but I remember watching a Jackie Chan movie. We watched The Trial of Get, that I haven't even heard of since by anyone else. We watched the Apu movie, the first one, called Patha Panchali. We watched that. We watched many like serious cult films, and they'd be sprinkled in like fun ones where people would clap and laugh and all that stuff. But we had a project for that class where we had to screen a film, and you had to go to at least 2 or 3 of them, I believe. And so I randomly grabbed a movie that looked fun, and it was called Tanpopo. And I grabbed it, I pre-screened it just in case to make sure it wasn't like just some like softcore movie. And it ended up being one of my favorite movies. And I had a partner in the class. It was like a partner project. And she was like, just choose whatever. Like, I'm here for the ride. And I said, okay, cool. Because she didn't care for movies. It was a writing intensive course. So a lot of people took it because of that credit that you would get for your undergrad degree. And so I took it because I liked films. So, but I was like, we're watching Tanpopo. Like, this movie is so awesome. And she was like, okay. And I showed up and we did the screening. And everybody loved it. Not many people showed up. There was about 6 or 7, I think. And that's about the average that showed up to each screening. But I also watched Battle Royale. I watched one of the Godzilla movies. I think it was Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. Not the one from like the 60s, but like a later one, like in the 90s, I think. But we watched lots of films and I was really into it. And after I passed that course with like, I think it was like an A+ I got, I went back home because, we weren't allowed to stay in the freshman dorms or anything. Because I just kind of stayed in the dorm I was in until like the very last year. And I went home. I was like, I want to buy some movies. And he kind of, like, I hadn't really known about Criterion at that point, or Era Video, really anything. I was just totally blind. So I went to my local, like, charity shop or so, or, like a, what's it called? Not like a Goodwill, but basically a Goodwill, where you walk in and there's, like, a bunch of instruments and, like, lawn equipment and books and movies and stuff. And I went in and they had a Christmas sale going on. And so it was like, buy one, get one, basically. And each movie was like $1. So I just like grabbed them all. Just took every movie they had on Blu-ray. And I got like the Spider-Man trilogy. I got the 2014 Godzilla movie. I got like a bunch of movies. And then I went to FYE and I bought the Warcraft movie because I was a huge World of Warcraft gamer fan growing up. So, I bought it and I came home with like 16 movies for like $35 or something. And that's a good deal, but like, as I discovered for the next like semester especially, because I did a project in my sustainability course for my dorm that I talked about the sustainability of film collecting. So I was like, there's so much plastic involved and like paper and like all this stuff. And I was like, is this a sustainable, way to like watch movies? And I had a lot of interviews with Will actually. And he was like, it's very sustainable because once you have it, you have it. Like, that's it. And so it's not like streaming where it constantly goes away and you have to like just hope that it's out there. And so we had a lot of different interviews about it. He informed me about Criterion. I don't remember if he talked about Era Video or anything like that. Because I mentioned a quote by Guillermo del Toro during that interview where Guillermo del Toro was like, don't go to film school. Just go through the Criterion Collection and all of the supplements, and you will learn even more than in film school. And I was like, do you agree with this quote? And he was like, yeah, that's like a very insightful quote. Like, the Criterion Collection is amazing. And I was like, what releases do you recommend? And he talked about Videodrome. He talked about Kurosawa and like Orson Welles and, all those. He said, I asked him something about how, like, for someone like me getting into collecting, should I go for the classics or stuff that I would like? Because it's good to know the classics like Kurosawa, Orson Welles, all that. And he was basically like, do a mix. And so, in 2017 now, this is where we are on the timeline. I had just finished up that paper. It was a pretty long paper. The first Criterion sale happened that I had no idea about. Excuse me. But I remember while I was doing that screening project for the World Cult Films class where I was screening Tanpopo, it actually got announced on Criterion like the next week after I screened it. And I was like, oh, that's so weird. But now we are going to go into my full Criterion collection. There's a lot. I'm gonna start with that first sale that I ever partook in. So I ended up buying 15 movies, I think. Yes, because I had been working at a grocery store, a local one. Not really local, it's Harris Teeter. I think it's like a regional grocery store, and I was making $8 an hour. And I worked like a lot of, like just enough hours where I was like, I'm good for like the next year, because I wasn't much of a social person. I never went out, like I never spent money unless it was like on cookout. And so I ended up blowing a lot of money on that sale. So we're gonna go into that. I'm gonna talk about each movie that I got and just kind of talk about it and what I thought, and you know, so on and so forth. So let's get started into the first batch. Okay, so the first, this isn't in really any order, but the first for my big haul, I guess, was Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo. So this movie is what Clint Eastwood didn't really copy. So I'm trying to remember what that movie's called. Like Fistful of Dollars, I think. This is basically the original one. Everyone in America would like create shot-for-shot remakes of Kurosawa movies. And then like instead of samurais, they would turn it into like cowboys. But this was not the first Kurosawa movie that I ever saw. That goes to Seven Samurai. I saw that, I think, on DVD originally or something. But this stars Toshiro Mifune, who I love now. Back then, I had no idea who he was. But this is basically about a samurai who is playing both sides of a conflict in a village. And he just makes them both like very disadvantaged in multiple different ways. And by the end of the movie, they're all dead. And it's just him and like the innocents left. So I love this movie. I love Kurosawa. So this is movie 1. I'm just gonna stack them all behind me. So now this movie that I bought it because of the packaging. I did mention this on the video with Will about my favorite packaging for Criterion, and this is definitely it. This is Terrence Malick's The New World. This has like 3 or 4 different cuts of the movie on it, and I remember I saw this in store, and I was like, this is so beautiful, like it's a legit painting. There it is. And I was just like, this looks so awesome, like I have to get this. And it has a lot of people who I know, like Colin Farrell, it has Christian Bale, so it's like a pretty like mainstream movie, but I just really like this packaging. And this, just to, for those who don't know, and if it's not too obvious from the cover, this is about the first contact, I guess, between indigenous Americans and the colonizers. So you get the story of Jamestown, I believe. Yeah, of Jamestown. And Pocahontas is in this. This is like a more accurate telling of Pocahontas than the Disney movie. Of course, it's Disney. They're not gonna make a violent, like, horrible, like, grotesque movie. But this is a really great film. I really like it. I haven't watched it in a few years, but I'd be interested to see the difference between the theatrical cut and the director's cut. Because I'm the type of guy who will more likely lean towards a director's cut when I'm watching a movie. So that is The New World, number 2. And put the plastic ones on top so they don't break. So this next one is one I've already mentioned. This was my first Kurosawa movie I ever saw. Seven Samurai. What people call film school in a box. This comes with multiple film commentaries. This is like a 3.5-hour movie, by the way. This is like the most epic movie I've ever seen. Like Lord of the Rings is like awesome and I love it. But this is from the 50s. 1954. So it's a very long movie. And watching the behind the scenes of this movie is insane. The conditions that the actors had to work in. Because there's a big final battle at the end of the movie where they're fighting and like pouring down rain. And it's mud everywhere and it's just chaos. They filmed that in winter. And all of the stars were like huddled by fires and like fuzzy slippers, like when they went shooting. And this is about basically a village is about to be attacked by bandits. The village elder is like, we need to go find some samurai. And the farmers are like, we have like no money. They've taken all of our money. They're going to take our grain next. And so the village elder is like, just go find some honorable, like, samurai. And so they're like, okay, we'll try. We'll see what happens. And they go to, like, a more populated town. And they find Takashi Shimura, who's another frequent collaborator with Kurosawa. And he plays, like, an, like, older samurai who's, like, very kind-hearted, but very, like, brutal. And they stumble upon him saving a child from a bandit who got kidnapped, I guess, and is being held hostage in like a hut. And he cuts his top knot off, which is like a huge thing for samurai. I think it's like the longer the top knot, like the more skilled you are. But so they recruit him, and then he helps them find the 6 other samurai. And then they hold up in this tiny village, and they basically just refix the land so that it is like they are able to defend it more. So they build like trenches, they chop down trees that are blocking the way, they build fake floors so that when the horses ride by, they fall. And so this is a great movie. I love this movie. I watch it every year, sometimes twice a year. And it really is a film school in a box. There are like 3 documentaries in it. And it's not just like small documentaries. There's a 2-hour conversation between Kurosawa and a other director, Nagisa Oshima, who I'm not familiar with. But everyone needs this release. This is one of those releases everyone says every film collector must have. So this was one of the first purchases I ever made. And so along with these and the next few. But 7 Samurai. So this next one, I guess this is how I got involved in cult films, is that Will heavily recommended that I check this movie out. I did. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I watched it again. I kind of understood a little more, and then I watched it again. But I'd read the booklet before watching it for a 3rd time, and I was like, okay, I kind of get it now. And then the 4th time, I watched it on the audio commentary, and I was like, yeah, this movie's awesome. And this is David Cronenberg's Videodrome. David Cronenberg has become one of my favorite film collectors, or film directors of recent time. And it's because of this movie, because, I mean, if you look at that cover, it's like so weird. A guy is melting his head into a TV with lips. Very sexual, erotic. And I love the packaging for it, because it comes in like, it looks like a cassette tape. And it's so awesome. It comes in a nice little slip cover. So it looks like that. And this movie is just so weird, and I love it. I love the effects. Because recently I saw Tetsuo, the Iron Man, by Shinya Tsukamoto. And I basically called that movie the special effects of David Cronenberg mixed with the weird, like, stories of David Lynch and that, like, aesthetic. And if it wasn't for this movie, I would not be as deep into cult films as I would be now. Because this movie is awesome. Everyone should have this. So the next one I got because I was curious about this. It's another Terrence Malick movie. It's a war movie. I am very particular about my war movies because I am very, I guess, suspicious of movies that kind of portray any military unit as, like, fun and, like, wacky. Because if you watch a lot of movies from, like, the 50s and 60s with the military, they're always, like, smoking and they're such jolly good boys. And this movie just kind of, like, debunked that and did not portray them that way at all. And this is The Thin Red Line by Terrence Malick. I actually saw this at Ed McKay's back when it was called that. And I was like, there's something wrong with, like, the cover. Why is there a line deep in it? And then I saw it at Barnes & Noble, which is where I did the first sale. And I was like, oh, that's, like, supposed to be there. But this is a World War II movie about Guadalcanal. And it's like a 3-hour movie. It's very long. It's very emotional. I've seen it once and I haven't seen it again just because, like, I'm not much of a war person, but I like Terrence Malick a lot. I've seen most of his movies now, except for the ones that no one cares about, because life is short. But I really like Badlands and Days of Heaven, so I bought this and I was like, this is great. And it's like an ensemble cast. Everybody you know is in it. It's one of those movies where each person that comes on, you're like, I've seen that guy. I've seen him somewhere. And it's so good. I really like this one. Okay, so this one is the one that made me very excited to dive into the Criterion Collection. I've mentioned it before. It got announced onto Blu-ray like a week after I screened it for Cult Films class, and that is Tanpopo. This movie is about a struggling ramen shop owner who is, since the death of her husband, I believe, or when he left her and her son, she started really failing in terms of making ramen. And so 2 milk delivery drivers come by and they're like audiobook lovers because they're listening to an audiobook about a ramen, like, master and how he, like, makes ramen. And so, that's all they own in terms of audiobooks, so they just listen to it over and over again. And while they're driving, they get really hungry, and they're like, okay, let's just stop at the first one we see. And it happens to be Tanpopo's. That's the main woman's name. They stop at her shop, and they see it's, like, in such disarray. She's not even boiling the water right, or the broth. And there's, like, mobsters hanging out, being like, hey, I'll marry you. You'll live comfortably for the rest of your life. And she's like, I just want to make ramen. And the milkmen get into a scuffle. They fight with the mobsters. And she's like, oh, no, this is so bad. And she takes him in. And he's like, your shop sucks. Your ramen sucks. Like, you should be ashamed. And she's like, can you stay and teach me how to cook ramen? And he's like, fine. And so the rest of the movie is them, like, Rocky Balboa teaching her how to make ramen. And they bring in world-class ramen cooks. And there are many shots in the movie where the plates are, like, right here. And they're, like, cooking, like, actual food, and it looks so good. Do not watch this movie hungry. This is one of my favorite movies ever, and the director is Juzo Itami. I think there's one other movie by him that everyone likes that I haven't checked out. But this release is so good. It's a 4K restoration. And there's a really great documentary that I heavily recommend everyone, where the director just goes from like the history from the moment he got the idea all the way to the end. And so I heavily recommend this set. I was so excited to see that no one else had picked it up. Like, very few people talk about this movie. It makes me sad. This is one of my favorite movies ever. So, Tanpopo by Juzo Itami. So this one I bought because everyone was hyping it up. And everyone was like super excited for it. But I've seen it 2 or 3 times and it just does not appeal to me. It is Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker. I'm more of a Solaris fan, but this one is such a rough ride for me. I know Kurosawa, I believe, or Stanley Kubrick. It's one of them. I think it's Stanley Kubrick. They were both like best friends, or they were like great admirers of each other. And so I was excited to watch this. It's about 3 men who decide to walk to the uninhabitable zone. And so apparently there's like a well of knowledge in the center. Like if you get to it, you learn everything there is to know about life. That's a cool premise. I'm totally for that. But the whole movie is these 3 men walking beside a railroad track talking. I like my slow movies. I do. I like movies where people stand in a room and talk. This movie does not cut it for me. I haven't watched it in 2 years or so, so maybe my opinion has changed. I've seen all of his movies at this point. Andrei Rublev, Ivan's Childhood, the Mirror, yeah. Solaris. Solaris was the second movie I saw, and I love that way more than this. But I had to own it because everyone loved it, and this is regarded as Andrei Tarkovsky's best movie. Everybody died in this movie making it because they filmed in like super cancerous, like radioactive areas making this movie. And apparently they were like 95% done filming. And then all of the film reels like exploded. And so they had to refilm the entire movie. So I like behind the scenes like that. Was like so like crazy. But the movie itself is like okay. I know I'm going to get some downvotes for that. And like thumbs down on YouTube. But it's a 3-hour movie. Okay. All of Tarkovsky's movies are 3 hours. Except for Solaris, which is like 2 hours. And that movie's like way better. Because there's an interview with Tarkovsky in response to Solaris, I believe. The next movie he did, I think, was Andrei Rublev. But Tarkovsky was asked, like, why are your movies so long? Or something. He's like, oh, I just like pissing off critics and the audience members. And I'm like, you shouldn't be making your movies long because of that. Because Seven Samurai, that's longer than this by like 30 minutes, maybe 40, I think. And that movie is like so engaging the entire way through. And I just don't care for this movie. I don't know why I still have it. I think it's just because I guess it gives me street cred when I upload my collection and everyone's like, ooh, Stalker, that movie's so great. And I'm like, okay, it's fine. So that was movie 7 that I got. This is still in my first haul that I ever bought. So the next one I got, I was excited for because I'm a huge horror fan. It's Rosemary's Baby. I love the cover. That's the, oh my gosh, the glare. My God, the fuck. There it is. Okay. So that's the theatrical trailer. Quick aside, I have an issue with Criterion in that they do not do what Era Video does, which is do a new artwork and then have the reverse side be like, you know, the original artwork. Like, usually they, like, Era Video, when you open it, if I can find one. Shit. So I'm going to talk about Scream Factory for a second, because they do it too. Usually they have, like, new artwork on the front, and then when you open it, you can, like, switch it. You can see that the original is on the other side. Criterion doesn't do that. They just do, like, whatever the fuck they want. And that's, like, the one issue I have with Criterion. I wish they would do both. But it's one of the few times where the original one is so good they don't have to do anything. But this is a longer horror film. I love my slow burn horror movies. Like Hereditary, this, The Witch, and what else? Like The Lighthouse, maybe? But this movie's a classic. I love this one. It's by one of the worst people in the world, Roman Polanski, but what I like about this release is that they do not shy away from talking shit about Roman Polanski, because he's awful. And so it's nice that, you know, they talk shit about him the whole time, because you can still enjoy the movie and hate the artist. So, and it also helps that the original author of the book had such a heavy role in this film. So, I give all credit to him and none to the director. So, cancel that fucker. The next one is another Kurosawa movie. This is a chunky release. It's one of those that you hold and you can tell there's a booklet. And that is Rashman. Kurosawa's Rashman. This is one of his first very successful movies he ever made. It's about the rape and murder of somebody. Well, the rape of a noble woman and the murder of her husband, I believe. But it's told in 4 different narratives. And so this one is so good. It's from 1950. So it's like 71 years old. And it's still awesome. I love this movie. And it has a lot of different special features on this. I've seen a few of them. There's a really interesting one where you can watch live when they do the like filming towards the sun while the trees are going by, because that was not a popular shot until this movie was made. And so this movie's a must-have for any film collector of Criterion, so definitely get this. So this one is a movie that I loved growing up when it came out. I was 10 years old when this came out, maybe 9, since my birthday is in like October. But that is Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth. This is a Spanish film about the Spanish-American War, I believe. The Spanish Civil War. So it's about a little girl who, she and her mom are forced to live with one of the generals of one of the sides of the war. The dad is a total asshole, and her mom is pregnant, and there's a lot of fantastical stuff. It's very arguable whether the fantastical stuff is actually happening, or if that's just the imagination of the little girl and her trying to, like, not freak out over the war. So, this movie's awesome. It's surprisingly not my favorite Del Toro movie, but it's really high up. I love the artwork for this, and if you haven't seen it, there's a DVD box set of all his movies. Well, the 3 movies that Criterion has released at this point, and it's only for DVD, and those look so awesome. And the one for the Blu-ray looks like a shitty, like, Valentine's Day box. I don't like the look of it at all. So I went individual releases on his movies. So the next one is one that I actually was recommended to by Will, and that is Ghost World by Terry Swigoff. This has Scarlett Johansson and Thora Birch, who like everybody loves, like the later movies, and ScarJo is like amazing. And this is from 2001. It's about two late high schoolers who are applying for colleges and trying to figure out what to do after high school. And Scarlett Johansson is like very productive and looking for apartments, and Thora Birch falls in love with a record collector played by Steve Buscemi, and they kind of, hang out with him, and he's like in his 30s or 40s, and he's just kind of like, I like to collect records, and he's like the most boring guy. And Thora Birch ends up having a relationship with him, and he's like, I just want to listen to music all day. And she's like, how can you be so boring? He's like, well, I'm happy, unlike you. And there's lots of great like moments in this movie. I love the artwork. It even comes with a comic. With the comic book, which is really cool. So, that is Ghost World. Highly recommend. The listing is getting bigger. So it looks like the rest of them are Guillermo del Toro movies. The next one is The Devil's Backbone. It's a Spanish film about a ghost boy who is a ghost of one of the kids that one of the, people killed. It's about a kid who gets orphaned by the war, and he goes to live at an orphanage. And there's lots of weird, creepy ghosts. It's a great movie. Everyone should watch it. This is one of my favorites. I kind of rank it above, not Guillermo del Toro, above Pan's Labyrinth. I really like this one. And I haven't seen any of the extras on this, but I'm sure they're just as good. So this is the last one that I still own that I bought. And that is Guillermo del Toro's Chronos. This is a vampire story that he did. I think it's his first movie he ever made. And I like this movie for the most part. I thought it was okay. But it's his first movie. It has Ron Perlman, who is really fun. He's great. He played Hellboy, for those who remember that movie that Guillermo del Toro kind of got fucked over with on making the third movie, but, water under the bridge at this point. But this movie's good. I haven't watched it often, but it has a really sick artwork. So, yeah. If you're a big Guillermo del Toro fan, get this. So those are all the movies I got my first round. But there's two that I actually sold. So those were Repo Man and Watership Down. Watership Down, I watched it once and I was like, I don't want to watch that again. That was great, but that was like so disturbing and like weird. And I'm not much of an animation guy unless it's like Japanese anime, but I watched it again. I was like, yeah, I don't want to watch it ever again. And I think I sold it to one of my friends of mine. But Repo Man, I totally regret getting rid of that. Someone offered to trade me like 2 movies for it. And I was like, sure. And I traded it. Then like the next day I was like, fuck. I was like, should not have gotten rid of it. And I haven't had any motivation to buy it again. The packaging's amazing too. So, and the movie itself is so punk rock. And it has Harry Dean Stanton, who is like one of my favorite actors. At least who never play main roles. So I'm going to go through the rest of the collection now. There are still a lot of movies. So, and there's some up there that Okay. We're going to go through my DVDs, just because there's not many of them. But the first one is Monty Python's Life of Brian. I'm shocked that they haven't upgraded this, because they would make so much money on this. Because They love Monty Python. And this isn't my favorite Monty Python movie. It's up there, but I think I'm just so sick of the Holy Grail movie because everybody quotes it so fucking often that it ruins the movie. And anytime you watch the movie with anybody, people they just like yell out the lines while they watch it. I have talked before with friends of mine talking about how seeing that movie Rocky Horror Picture Show sounds like a total nightmare to me because I like watching movies and like not having people yell around me and seeing videos of like when it first came out where people are throwing popcorn and like screaming and singing, and that is not a good time for me. I like just watching movies, and that's what Holy Grail is to me. It's a nightmare to watch with people. But Life of Brian is really good. There's no Blu-ray of it, so that's why I have it. It was really cheap. I don't even remember buying this. I may have bought it like at Ed McKay's. I'm seeing if I have a receipt in here. I do not, so I don't know how I got it. It just showed up, I guess, but just gonna keep stacking it. The next one I actually got from Will. He was getting rid of it and he couldn't find a buyer, so he offered to trade it. So I traded him Driller Killer on limited edition steelbook for Ikiru and the Blu-ray Alfred Hitchcock collection. This one. He traded me both of these for Driller Killer on limited edition Blu-ray steelbook, so I'll put that right there. And so this is one of my favorite Kurosawa movies. Now I'm having an issue with upgrading it because I love this movie, but I want it on Blu-ray now. So I'm also having issues getting rid of it because I don't want to spend money on a whole new Blu-ray of a movie I already own. So, but this is one of my favorite Kurosawa movies. It's about a older like worker and like an environmental agency who is like just a button pusher. He's just like stamping like all his life and he has like no purpose, and one day he realizes like when he gets diagnosed with cancer, he's like, I have done nothing with my life. And so he goes through and starts making differences in people's lives. And it's a really powerful movie. I love this movie. It is so emotional. It's very well done. Takashi Shimura again in this movie. He's great. So that is Ikiru. This one I should have bought on Blu-ray, but I found it for $1 at Ed McKay's. Curious Case of Benjamin Button by David Fincher, I believe. Yep. David Fincher is a director I like a lot. I think a lot of people kind of blow him up higher than he needs to be. Like, people say he's better than Kurosawa, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's great, but he's not Kurosawa. But this is one of the movies, has Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett, two great actors and actresses. And it's about a guy who is born old, and as he grows up, he gets younger. So when he's dead, he looks like an actual baby. And when he's born, he looks like a raisin. So I really like this movie. I've seen it once because it's DVD and I don't want to fuck up the disc too much. But it's really good. I like it. I should have bought it on Blu-ray. This is one of the first Blu-rays Criterion released, I believe. So pretty interesting. Yeah, let's finish the DVDs. So this next one I've gone through now. I was talking about it in my little updates with Will. It is the first films of Kurosawa box set. It's like $30. So this is the Eclipse series, though. This is a series where if Criterion has a bunch of movies that are like distinctly similar to each other, like the first films of Kurosawa. These movies individually would never sell on their own. And so they package them together and they're like, here you go, consumer, buy this. And so people do, because all of them are together. There's lots of special features, so on and so forth. I really like these movies. I liked Senshiro Sugata, The Most Beautiful, and The Men Who Tread on the Tiger's Tail. That third movie is amazing. I've seen it twice now in like a month. It's so good. Takashi Shimura, again, is in it. He's in everything. Along with Senshiro Sugata. I think he's in all 4 of these movies. So my only issue is that they open from the bottom along with the top. So if you take out a movie, it's like awful. Like annoying. I just got it out of... I hope I put it in the right space. So that's the first films of Kurosawa. I don't have many Eclipse releases because I'd rather buy Blu-rays than DVDs. Oh, shit. Oh my god. Oh my god, everything's a disaster. Okay. Hopefully y'all can't see that big stack of Criterions. This one I haven't opened yet. I got it for Christmas. It is the post-war Kurosawa movies. It takes place right after the first films. This has 5 movies. The last one had 4. I think I said 5, but it's 4. This one has 5. This one, I think Will has said is really good. He said No Regrets for Our Youth is one of his best. I haven't seen any of these movies, but, you know, it was Christmas. I needed some movies, and usually I ask for Kurosawa movies for my birthday and Christmas because there's so many. And I'm going to be pretty upset if they ever upgrade that DVD box set that has every single movie of his. I hope they do upgrade it, but I don't know what I'm going to do with all these Kurosawa movies that I own. So, post-war. I'm going to start making a stack on that side. So this one I bought with a gift card. It's a set that I was really excited to own. We're on the DVD, although, I'm sorry. We are on the Blu-rays now, so there's going to be no order to this. Some of these I have no idea when I got. Some of them I remember, but this is 1932's Vampire. What I like about this release is that it comes with the entire screenplay. Whoops. And so you can see that it comes with like stage directions and the entire script for the movie. That is so cool. I wish they did that more often. But Vampire. There's not much I can say about it. I've rewatched it about every year for Halloween. Not Halloween Day, but for my 31 days of Halloween. And I like it a lot. I think the filmmaking of it is far more interesting than the actual movie of it, because it's from 1932. It is almost 80 years old next year. So it's directed by Carl Theodor Dreyer, who I own another of his movies, so we'll talk about that soon. But this movie's really good. If you're into old silent films, definitely get this. And the artwork is just so awesome. So this next one I haven't opened yet because I want to go through this series again. And this movie takes place after the series. And that is David Lynch's Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. This is a movie about... It's so hard to talk about without spoilers, but the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks was made in the 80s, I believe, into the 90s. And it's about a murder mystery about Sarah Palmer. She gets killed. She's the homecoming queen. Everybody loves her. Who killed Laura Palmer? That's her name, not whatever I said earlier. Laura Palmer. And this movie It's all about her, like before the series, but you don't watch this before the 2 seasons of the show. I love this movie so much. It is so emotional. I can't believe it flopped when it came out. Although I guess people wanted, like, what happened at the end. They wanted a continuation or resolution, but it's David Lynch. He's not going to do that. So definitely check this out after the first 2 seasons. So this one is a movie I love so much. I rewatch it like so often. It's one of my favorite movies. It is David Byrne's True Stories with John Goodman. It is a comedy slice of life movie about a fake town in Texas. And so it's a musical movie. It's not a musical though. It's like one of those movies where people will break into song, but it's about the plot. Like, it's really hard to explain, but this is one of the most wholesome movies ever. I love David Byrne in this. He has the biggest cowboy hat you'll ever see. And John Goodman is like so funny in this movie. And it's like an hour and 29 minutes. It's so short. It's like Reanimator. You can watch it like every day if you want. But this movie is so awesome. I haven't gone into the special features yet. Because I just... Okay. I don't care. I just love the movie, though, so much. So the next one I got because I remember loving this movie as a kid. And that is Jonathan Demme's Silence of the Lambs. I love this packaging so much. And I remember they announced this and everyone was shocked that they upgraded it because it's such a high-profile movie. And I finally bought it recently on the February Criterion sale. And so, had to buy it. I love Anthony Hopkins in this movie. I love, what's her name? I'm trying to find her name. What's her name? Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster is great in this movie. And I'm shocked that the music or composer for this movie is Howard Shore. It seems like he's done so many scores for movies. So it's another great Howard Shore soundtrack. And everyone needs to have this release. I enjoyed it as much as I did as a kid. So, except I noticed a whole lot more this time. So, Silence of the Lambs. So this next one, that is one I bought in person for during one of the sales, I think, last year. I watched the movie on Netflix because I didn't know if I wanted to buy it yet, but I ended up loving it. It is, what's the director? Noah Baumbach's Marriage Story. You can see the wrapper is still on. I did not pay $40. I paid like $20. So this is a movie about 2 parents who are divorcing and they're having to balance the workday struggles and raising a kid and all this stuff, and they hate each other. I love Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, another Scarlett Johansson movie, and they are all great. One of my favorite movies of last year, in 2019 actually. It's a little long. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes. This is one of those movies I talk about where it's compelling sitting around a room, because Noah Baumbach would just like plant a camera in the corner of the room and be like, okay, Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, go act. And they like talk for like 30 minutes in like one shot. And I love it. It's so like well acted, well shot, so on and so forth. So Laura Dern shows up and she's awesome in this movie. I love Laura Dern. So definitely check this out. So this next one I got really cheap on Amazon, like when I first started collecting. and that is another David Cronenberg. This one is Scanners. This movie is famous for its head explosion scene. And it's an awesome scene. It's one of my, I don't want to say least favorite David Cronenberg movies, but his other movies are so much better. I love Videodrome. I love Crash. I love Shivers. I'm trying to think any other movies by him. But this one's really good. I recommend this. It's always really cheap. I got it for like $13, I think. Back when I was a student, when I had like free Amazon Prime. So I heavily recommend this release. I haven't looked at the special features. Actually, yes, I have. There's one documentary on here about the special effects, where they show how they did the head explosion scene. And it's so awesome. Definitely check this out if you're a fan of David Cronenberg. Ugh. So this next one is one I was very excited to finally own. And that is Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. I love Bong Joon-ho's movies. Memories of Murder, Mother, The Host. Kinda Snowpiercer, but this movie's one of his best. Memories of Murder, I think, is his best. And I enjoy Mother the most. And I've seen all the special features, but I haven't rewatched the movie. And they also released a black and white version of the movie, which I don't know if that's what Bong Joon-ho intended when he made the movie, because the use of color is so deliberate in this movie that I can't imagine that Bong Joon-ho would just not have that. So I'm going to rewatch it sometime soon, maybe, who knows. But I'm so excited that Criterion is finally releasing his movies. I hope we get Mother and The Host next. The Host is my favorite movie. That's the like homage to like Godzilla and like movies like that. So definitely check this one out. It's one of my favorites. So this one's really exciting and has a bit of fun behind the scenes context in my life, or I guess background info for me. So just to get out of the way, this is George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. I love this release, by the way. I love the artwork. For months, I did not open this because I was like, this is so beautiful, I don't want to mess it up. But I finally did. I watched all the special features, watched the movie again, but it's funny because I remember when there were rumors about this getting made, and then George A. Romero passed away. And that was a really upsetting time because, I mean, George Romero is a master of his craft. His later movies, but his early movies are great. And he passed away, and everyone was like, wasn't this supposed to be a Criterion release of Night of the Living Dead? And there was a lot of speculation around it, and finally Criterion came out and was like, yes, we were filming and had a lot more special features planned, but it looks like we won't be able to do it because they were all interviews with George A. Romero, and he got sick and passed away. But when he passed away, like a week later, a local theater of mine had a free Night of the Living Dead showing. So it was not the restoration that they had on here. This is a 4K restoration of the movie. Looks amazing. But they showed the movie. I dragged my dad along because I was like, it's free. You're coming with me. We're going to watch it. And everyone was very quiet the whole movie. It was an art house theater. So people were like really quiet, respectful. Nobody was throwing popcorn and laughing. And it was like so nice. It was in a really nice theater. It was in Durham. And so I was really excited to see it on the big screen. A few months later, they released it. I think I bought this a few months later after it released because it was really hard to find. So it's one of my favorites by George Romero. If you haven't watched it yet, you need to go watch it. It's the fundamental foundational zombie film. So check it out. Okay. Oh, actually, never mind. I have a whole nother stack right here on this side. So, but this is a box set little bit thing. So this is Lone Wolf and Cub. I think it has multiple directors on it. But this movie is about like a king's executioner who has to grab the king's son, like infant son, and run away from the capital. And it's 6 movies in here. There was supposed to be a 7th movie they were gonna make. And then I think the producer was like, fuck you, like, we're not making a 7th movie. And I was like watching the 6th movie, it ends on such a cliffhanger. And they were like, nah, we're not gonna make a next movie. But one of my favorite releases about it is that if you open up the spine, you get a poster. I try not to open the spine too much, but it's pretty cool. It shows the baby cut that the main executioner, main character makes, where he ties like guns and like samurai swords to. But this is one of my favorite movies. Oh wow, apparently there's another poster in here that I never knew about. Let's look at that. It looks like the same thing. Here's proof that there's 2 of them. Yeah, so I guess they stuck in both. I'm not looking too closely, so it could be totally different. But this is one of my favorite movies, samurai movies. It's very bloody. I recommend everybody watch them. I'm trying to get it back in the box. I should not have taken out these posters. I kind of got it in, but I love the artwork on this. All the movies are really good. There's a lot of funny comedic moments when the executioner is like holding a baby on his side and he's just like fucking people up with a samurai sword. This takes place in like the 1700s, I think. I don't know, but it's based off of a manga series, which is interesting. I've been meaning to pick up the manga series, but I'm not much of a manga person anyways, but I highly recommend this set. It's pretty cheap, actually. I think it's like $30, like when it's on sale, so definitely pick up the Lone Wolf and Cub collection. Okay, so this next one I haven't opened yet either, because it's a David Lynch film, and I'm trying to collect all of his movies, so when the Criterion sale came up, I immediately bought it. That is Mulholland Drive. I really like this movie. It's even director approved, which is nice. It has a lot of different special features and so on and so forth, but I love Naomi Watts in this movie. She's one of the best actresses that David Lynch has worked with, along with Laura Dern. And it is so amazing, the little plot twists in this movie. So this is the movie that made me hate Roger Ebert, because he called David Lynch misogynist and awful, and he booed him at the Cannes Film Festival when this movie was shown. And so I hate Roger Ebert now. So this movie's amazing. Everyone should go watch Mulholland Drive. Oh, that is not. Okay. Okay, so we're on our last stack, kind of. And then we have box sets. So this is Terry Gilliam's Brazil. I don't like this movie as much as I should. It's almost 3 hours. It's about 2.5 hours long. And it's with Jonathan Pryce. And it's about a office worker who is like tired of his job. and it's so bureaucratic and annoying and depressing. And he like leads a freedom movement away from the office building or something. And he has dreams of flying. That's what the front poster is. It's a really great movie, but it's very dour and depressing. So I've only seen it like twice, I think. But if you're a Terry Gilliam fan, definitely pick this up. Okay, the next one is one I'm a big fan of that nobody cares about for some reason. Because the kid actors suck, but that's what you get when you have kid actors. And that is, what's his name? Shit. Richard Linklater's Boyhood. So this movie is a great movie for anyone exactly my age who grew up when this kid grew up. It's about a boy named Ethan Mason. That's the kid here. Nope. Here. All the way down. And they filmed this movie over 12 years, I think. So basically, it's like a 3-hour movie. It's long. So there's a little bit of repetition in this movie if you don't like it. But it has Ethan Hawke and Patricia Arquette, two great actors and actresses. And it's about a boy growing up from the age of 8 all the way to 19, I think. It goes from when he was in first grade all the way to when he's in college. And they filmed like an hour of footage of scenes for every year. And then they spliced it together into one big film that took 13 years, I think, to make. And I really like this movie. This movie, it's shocking that they pulled it off so well. But it's also such a great homage at my generation, I guess. Because there are so many pop culture references and, like, mindsets and, like, interesting perspectives that you saw if you were a kid when this kid, you know, was in the movie. So you get the Harry Potter release parties. You get, you know, Game Boy Advances and, like, how that, you know, affected your life and so on and so forth. I love this movie. Not many people do, but I do, so that's why I have it. So this next one is actually one we saw in Will's World Cult Cinema class that I forgot what movies we'd seen, but this was one we saw. I never thought we'd see it on Criterion, but that is Christian Mungiu's Beyond the Hills. It's a Romanian film from 2012. It's really good. It's very character driven. It's about a woman who becomes a nun for a really weird and kind of extreme it's not Catholic, but I guess Roman Catholic church. And she is, like, really trying to stay with the faith. But she has a woman who she had a relationship with come to the monastery and, like, be with her. And it's very tense and very emotional. I really like this movie. I don't watch it often because it's 2.5 hours. But I would highly recommend anyone to watch this. This is not talked about enough. Okay, so this one is one I love to death. It is one I watch all the time. I love springing it on people who've never even heard of it. And that is Spike Jonze's, is it Spike Jonze? Yeah, Spike Jonze's Being John Malkovich. I love this movie. The less you know about it going in, the better. So I'm not going to talk about it. I just love this movie. I have shown it to like 3 different people. And each person has been, like, on the phone not caring about the movie for, like, the first 15 minutes. And then the first twist happens and everyone's suddenly, you know, leaning into the TV for the rest of the movie. And I love this just so much. I haven't seen the behind the scenes on it yet, but this movie is just so fucking weird. I love it. Being John Malkovich. So this one is a Kurosawa movie. It is what George Lucas based Star Wars on. It is The Hidden Fortress. I really like this movie. It's one that I didn't like my first watch. But I think that was because I had a really shitty DVD that kept skipping. And it was like really awful to watch. But I got it on Blu-ray. And it is so great. You can really see the R2-D2 C-3PO inspirations in this movie. Toshiro Mifune is the main star. I don't think Takashi Shimura is in this, but this movie is just really well made. It's a later Kurosawa movie, 1958, so 4 years after Seven Samurai. I heavily recommend this. Most Kurosawa movies are just like, I want to say like 8 or 9 out of 10s, with Seven Samurai being 10 out of 10. Perfect movie, in my opinion. So this next movie I do not recommend to really anybody, but I love it. It is Michael Haneke's Funny Games. This movie is very depressing. It's about two white men who like take over a rich person's home and torture them for fun. And it's really dark. It breaks the fourth wall a lot, actually. But I heavily recommend this movie to anyone who likes really disturbing movies. I've seen the remake. I prefer the remake because Naomi Watts is in it. She's great in the movie. But it's really hard to recommend this to anybody who doesn't like disturbing movies. So, Funny Games by Michael Haneke. This one's another Kurosawa movie. I think it's my favorite one. I get very emotional at the final few minutes of the movie, but it's Kurosawa's Dreams, or Dreams. It is basically a collection of short films by him that he linked together into a thematically straight narrative. But it's all about his dedications to his dreams he's had throughout his life that have been so vibrant and has just stuck with him his whole life that he finally made a movie with collections about it. So the final story that he does on here is so emotional. When you frame it in that this is one of his last movies, this is from 1990, it is so it's so emotional because it's basically an appreciation of nature. And if I remember right, there's a band of singing people because it's for a funeral. Some great person died, and they're doing the ritual where they're going down the village road, and they're singing and playing instruments and all that stuff. And I swear there's a shot where as they're going along and it's the end, they pan down and they see a gravestone where it's life is beautiful, or creating is beautiful, or something. But that is a huge thing that what's his name? Kurosawa. One of his life mottos that he always said, and one of his books is creating art is a beautiful life, or something like that. It is somewhere. Maybe it's on here. It is wonderful to create. That's what he says all the time. And so it pans down to a grave saying it is beautiful to create. And I was just like, oh my gosh. That's Kurosawa facing his mortality. And he died a few years later, after making this film. I don't think it was his last film. I think he made one more after this. But this one is so good. I recommend everybody watch it. So make sure you've seen a couple of his movies first before you watch it, so that you can get the full appreciation. Martin Scorsese shows up and plays Vincent Van Gogh, which is fun. So Kurosawa's dreams. My voice is running out. But this one I bought because I'm a huge David Lynch fan, but I was not impressed by it, by the actual documentary. But it is David Lynch's The Art Life. It's not made by him, but it's about him, and Criterion released it. It's like $15 on sale, so I was like, why not? It's all about him and his inspirations and his stories about growing up, and it's great context about him. There's a really great part in the beginning where he talks about his childhood, and I was very like, oh, okay, I understand a lot more now. But I need to rewatch this. I did fall asleep during this because it's like such a slow documentary. It's not like a normal documentary where you get clips and stuff. You just get David Lynch sitting there talking. So he's not only talking, he's also smoking and drinking coffee. So this is really good for if you're a David Lynch fan. So definitely check this one out. Oh boy. So this one is another David Cronenberg one. This one I don't recommend to anybody because I don't want anyone to know that I love this movie. But, like anyone in my life. But this is David Cronenberg's Crash. It's about car crash fetishists who purposely get into car crashes and mangle their own bodies because they're sexually aroused by it, and it's such a weird fucking movie. It's really hard to recommend to anybody because it is so weird. There's a really disturbing part of the movie that I couldn't even watch it, where there's a woman throughout the movie who has like those leg braces, like the metal ones along the leg, that keep the bone like straight after a really horrific break or fracture. And there's a big scar down the middle of her leg. And our main character has sex with the scar, and it opens, and it's just so disgusting. And I felt dirty watching the movie. It's like a porno before people sexually attracted to car crashes. And what's really fucking weird about this movie is that I work in the Department of Transportation, and I do crash like analysis, and like I can't even think about my job normally anymore because of this fucking movie. But it's so good. I've heard the Era video release is much better, so do your research, see what you would rather have, but I like my C's on the spine, so I bought the Criterion one. I'm running out of room. But the next one is another old silent film. It was one that was considered lost forever. It was found in a mental asylum, I believe. Something weird. But it is The Passion of Joan of Arc by Carl Dreyer. This one's really good. It's from 1928. The restoration isn't the best because they didn't have much to work with. So I really like this. This is a very historical film. I really like it, but it's not one I can watch often. I love the cover for it too, so definitely check this one out. Oh, yeah, this one. Okay, this one, another David Cronenberg movie, but one I really did not like. It is Naked Lunch. It felt like Videodrome, but with bugs. There's not much to say about it, but there's a great there's an actor in this movie who I forgot, but he has a really great role where he plays like multiple different people. But I don't know, I did not really like this movie as much as I did his other movies. But, yeah. It just felt like Videodrome, but with bugs. So, I prefer Videodrome over this. Over Naked Lunch. This next one I got because I needed to own a John Waters movie. I decided to get his first movie. Well, his second movie, I guess. It is Multiple Maniacs with Divine. So this movie is so infamous because of its content. It's very, I guess, anti. It's very rebellious, very anti-authority. It just John Waters does whatever the fuck he wants, and I love this movie a lot. I don't watch it often because it's weird. There's a part where a woman gets raped by a crab. So yeah, I think it's Divine gets raped, but this movie is so weird. I love my weird movies. There are some really great special features on this. There's a great interview with John Waters, but I highly recommend this. I like Multiple Maniacs. I haven't seen Female Trouble or Pink Flamingos, and those are like the big movies I've seen. That movie with the Smellorama, I forgot what it's called, but I've also seen no, those are the only two movies I've seen. Multiple Maniacs and the Smellorama one. I can't remember what that one was called, but definitely recommend this release. Okay, we're getting close, I guess. This one is one that I really like because I love Oscar Isaac. It's a Coen Brothers movie. It is Inside Llewyn Davis. This one's really good. It's a homage to the folk of the 1950s, I believe, or early 60s in New York City. John Goodman is in it. Adam Driver has a really small part in the movie. So, this was right before Star Wars, I believe. So, you get a early look at Adam Driver and his acting. He's really funny. But Oscar Isaac just carries this movie. He is so good in this. And yeah, everyone should watch this at least, if not own it. This one's another Kurosawa movie. This one, I honestly barely remember. It's exactly 3 hours long, but it is Kurosawa's Kagemusha. I liked this, I just don't remember anything, so I can't really talk much about it, but there are interviews on here with George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola talking about Kurosawa in this movie, so that's pretty cool. This is from 1980, so like right after, I guess, the second Star Wars movie came out, so pretty cool. I'm a Kurosawa fan, so I had to own it. Okay, we are going down. We're almost done. So this one is one of my favorite cult films of all time. This is one we saw in that cult films class I took. And this is House by it's like written in cursive, by Nobuhiko Obayashi. This movie is so weird, and there's a great documentary on this talking about the behind the scenes for it. But it's really funny because on the back it says it was never on home video in America. And I'm so shocked because this came out the same year as Dawn of the Dead, 1977. Or I guess the same year as Suspiria. And this is such a great double feature with Suspiria. It is very psychedelic. It's basically an episode of Scooby-Doo, but like violent. I think they even say that on the back. An episode of Scooby-Doo as directed by Mario Bava, who is like a really famous cult director. But everyone needs to watch this movie. I heavily recommend this to everybody. So, House. So this next one I don't know why my computer was shaking. So this next one is one I like, but it's not my favorite Jackie Chan movies. It is the Police Story movies. It's funny. There's some great fights, but I really like the Drunken Master movie and the Who Am I, which is one you can't really find on Blu-ray. There's a release of it on Blu-ray that I heard was like really awful, and they did no restoration on it, so still waiting. But there's 2 movies in here, which is nice, but it's not my favorite Jackie Chan movies, but I really like the artwork. Another issue I have is that not only does it open on this side, it opens on that side, so I wish they would like not do that sometimes. Opening on both sides, whether the top, bottom, or the sides. So definitely recommend this if you're a Jackie Chan fan and a martial arts fan, but I think if they were to release a Drunken Master movies, I would be very happy. Or Who Am I, which is, I grew up on that movie. I watched that every week for years when I was a kid. So that is one funny story about that class I had with Will, is that I saw that we were watching a Jackie Chan movie, and I didn't recognize the title, and I was like, oh, this is weird. And like I went to go get water or whatever, like before the movie started, and I was like, what the fuck? Because it was the movie I grew up on, Who Am I? And I was like, oh my god, and I like looked at Will, and I was like, dude, like I grew up on this movie. Like, I watched this every day on VHS. And that was just such a funny moment. That was like the one memorable thing in that class that I remember, is rediscovering one of my favorite movies growing up. So thank you to Will for that. Put that there. Okay, now we're mostly slip covers and box sets next. So this one is one of the first Criterions I got after my big sale, and that is David Lynch's Eraserhead. I love this release so much. That is such a cool cover, and it works really well in the slipcover format because everything is black on each side. So this was my first David Lynch movie I ever saw, aside from Elephant Man, but I didn't realize who David Lynch was when I watched Elephant Man. And no, actually, Lost Highway was my first David Lynch, because when I was like 12 years old, I had a huge Rammstein and Marilyn Manson phase, and they had a soundtrack by them for Lost Highway. And so when they did when they filmed the movie, they had all the actors like walking to the beat of Rammstein, like throughout the entire movie. And it's so awesome. But this was the third movie I guess I saw by him after Elephant Man. But this is one of my favorites. It's so weird, and some people don't really understand what the movie is. It's very much a commentary on the fears of a new father, like a father who just had a new baby, like where he is dealing with the stresses of being a new parent. So that baby for the second half of the movie is so weird. I remember I made my dad watch this, and he hated this movie. He constantly brings this movie up as one of the worst movies he ever saw. But I made sure to show him Gaspar Noé's climax, and now that's his worst movie ever. So he rarely talks about this anymore, but I love this movie so much. I love the cinematography. I love the main actor. What's his name? Jack Nance. He's great in Twin Peaks. He plays the older fisherman. who has the first line of the show, I believe. She's dead, wrapped in plastic. So I highly recommend this movie. It also came out in 1977, so that's a good year. House, this movie, and Suspiria. 3 of my favorite movies ever, so. This is gonna suck having to put all these back on the shelf. Ugh. So this is another David Lynch movie. This is Elephant Man. I haven't opened it. I got it on sale. It just came out on Criterion when I bought it, so. It's Anthony Hopkins and John Hurt, so I highly recommend this movie. This is his most accessible movie, so it's about the real-life elephant man who had elephantitis, and Anthony Hopkins plays a doctor, and he kind of rescues him from like a circus, a traveling freak show in the 1920s, and studies him, and befriends the elephant man, and it is so good. It's in black and white. Great performances by everybody. There's a very emotional scene about halfway through the movie. I mean, the entire last half is so emotional. But there's a part in the halfway point when the elephant man is invited over to have tea with Anthony Hopkins and his wife. And it's so emotional because she is like treating him with kindness, and he's like baffled and like stuttering the whole time. She's like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "I've never been treated, with respect or kindness." And he like describes his childhood, and his wife is like, crying like as subtly as she can. But at one point, she just runs away, and it's just so not hysterical, but so sad, and it's just such a huge scene. But I highly recommend everyone watch this movie. It's one of David Lynch's best, in my opinion. Although I don't enjoy this movie as much as I do Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet, or Eraserhead. So. This is Elephant Man. Speaking of Blue Velvet, here it is. I also got this recently on the Criterion sale in February, so you probably remember when I talked about this. But it's one of my favorite. I love Dennis Hopper in this movie. I remember I was a huge Pabst Blue Ribbon fan in high school. Well, not high school. In college, because it was cheap, and I thought it had a lot of alcohol content. I've now instead moved to Natty Daddy's, which has 8% per can. So, but I remember every time that somebody saw that I had Pabst Blue Ribbon, it was one of my friends. They'd be like, "Pabst," or it was PBR, best drink ever. It was hilarious. And I didn't understand it at all until I saw this movie. And I was like, oh, okay. But Kyle MacLachlan is in this, and it's his first movie ever. It's one of my favorite performances by him, although he's at his best in Twin Peaks. And we don't talk about Dune. That's his first movie, I believe. And he did this after, so... Oh, I thought there was damage on the back, but definitely recommend David Lynch's Blue Velvet. Okay, there's just a few more. This is another trilogy small box set. It is the Before trilogy. So by Richard Linklater. It is another one of those people sitting in a room talking. But instead, they're walking down the street and talking. These are one of my favorite movies ever. Me and my dad watched them all recently. And also went through all of the special features. And the basic premise is that Ethan Hawke meets a wonderful woman on the train in Europe. And he's like, I'm going to just make a chance and ask her out. Before I have to go back to America. And they talk to each other for like an hour and a half of film time, and it's actually throughout like a whole night. Oh, God damn. But that's the first movie, and then the second movie they come back 7 years later, like real time, and in the movie. So 7 years later they made movie 2, and it's all about them meeting again, like by chance, and that movie's really good. And then they made the third movie 7 years later in 2013, and it's now 2021. So there's been rumors that they are making a fourth movie. They won't say whether or not they are, so we'll just have to hope they don't have to do a re-release. But I really love these movies. I saw them for the first time on Valentine's Day because I had nothing else to do. I didn't have a date. So I watched all these movies, loved it, and got really depressed. Because this movie shows both sides of relationships, it being awesome and also very depressing and frustrating. So I definitely recommend all these movies. So we are almost done. There's 3 more after this one I'm holding in my hand. This is another Kurosawa Toshiro Mifune release, and that is Throne of Blood. I've seen it twice, I think, now. I really like this one. Toshiro Mifune is great in this one. I need to rewatch it, but I'm hoping to read his autobiography soon before I go back through his movies. So this one's a Macbeth retelling, I believe. So very tragic, great acting. There's some really great spooky scenes in this movie. Made in 1957, so right before, I guess, Hidden Fortress, he made this. But if I remember right, this was the most expensive movie ever made in Japan. So that's pretty cool. There's a lot of great sets. I think they made a whole castle. It's probably why it was so expensive. So Throne of Blood, heavily recommend. So the next box set is one I bought, I think. No, I got it for Christmas. And this one is just so great. It is the Bruce Lee's Greatest Hits. It comes with 5 movies. My favorite one is The Big Boss and Fist of Fury. But one of my favorite special features on this is that they have his last movie that he was making. And instead of putting in funeral footage and like a bunch of clips from other movies that the studio was making, they just show clips that he was in. And they have title cards like between each clip showing like what they were going to do before he died. So there's like 10 hours or so of special features and such on this. So I heavily recommend this release. It is so good. I've seen all the movies now. One of my favorite martial arts movies ever. Oh boy. So I don't end on a negative note. I'm going to show my second to last box set. I can't hold it too vertically, but this is the Godzilla Showa era collection. It is 14 movies, I believe, but I have a huge issue with this. So I'm gonna like story time, I guess. What I love is that it comes with like huge essays. So it comes with huge essays about each movie, about the series in general. And it comes with like summaries and essays about each movie and what makes them like, big, contenders. But My issue comes with the fact that the movies slide down, as you can see with this one. And it gets the glue between the sleeves on the discs. And so you can see on this one, I had to put a piece of paper then so it stays. And this one is falling down, so I gotta pull that back up. So all the discs are getting fucked up right now. And I hate how Criterion made it like this. It looks cool, but if you hold it vertically, they all fall. So I have to store it horizontally. So there's like glue on the back of it too. So oh well. I would have preferred it if they did it like this next box set that I'm gonna show, the Zatoichi box set. This is 25 movies, 10 movies over. So you open it, and this is where all the movies are stored. This is the slipcover. This is how the movies are stored. This is how it should be stored. You see, it's like again, it's like a storybook, but it's not like annoying. So you open it, Zatoichi. Oh, disc 1. Here's what's on the disc, the first 3 movies. Disc 2. The next 3 movies. So on and so forth. So you can see it keeps going. It has a commissioned piece of artwork on the side. So I've seen all of these movies. I actually took a whole month to watch a movie a day. And these are one of my favorite movies ever. It's about a blind swordsman who he walks into town and shenanigans happen, basically. Each movie is very similar to the next. So if you're not one of those people who like formulaic movies, you might want to look up the best of this collection. I do want to rewatch them all and do like a tier list of each movie, like of the whole series. But my issue with this set is, it's not really a big issue. It's not like this fucking Godzilla set, but there's a final movie that they did not include in this. A 26 movie that took place like 20 years after the final movie in this set, where Zatoichi is an old man and he has to like do one final adventure. And they also made a TV show that took place in that 20 years between both of those movies, but they didn't release that either. I hope they're working on it. I hope somebody is working on it, because they're out in Japan, I think, on DVD. But no one has a Blu-ray of it, so this is one of my favorite releases ever. I love these movies a lot. Each one has so much spirit and heart. It's so charming. But I highly recommend. This is how I wish the Godzilla set was. Now, I didn't show you the little booklet where they could have done with the same essays in the Godzilla set, where there's a essay. It's an essay book, but it also comes with like a summary of each movie. Has a cool little drawing for each one. I like how the first 2 drawings were in black and white, and then for the third movie, it's in color, because the third movie, that's when they began making them in color. So what's really fun about this set... Where is it? So what's really fun is that Lone Wolf and Cub, the main star for that movie, is the brother of the main star in these movies, Shintaro Katsu. That's who played Zatoichi. I don't remember his brother's name, but he appears in the second movie, I believe. And this set is just so beautiful. I hope they do more sets like this, like in this shape, because I don't like at all how they did the Godzilla one. I'm very tempted to just make my own box set, because there's an online YouTube tutorial on how to do it, but I don't know. My voice is going away, so I think that's all of the Criterion films I have. All of these, and then this, and this, the Godzilla. So let me know what you think of my collection. Let me know what you have in your collection. I would love to see what your guys' favorite movies are. All of these I own because they are my favorites, or that I have a really strong liking to. So I hope you enjoyed this movie, and I hope you have a great day.